Lovely. Thanks y'all for joining us. Really appreciate it. Let me get this. Oh, here we go. I think we can get started here. We got a bunch of folks coming in. Really excited about the conversation today. How to become a destination district for teachers. We know that this is a pretty crazy time, and that we're trying to sort of all compete for talent in lots of different ways. And so we're excited to convene the conversation. I'm Jason Lang. I'm the founder, president for BloomBoard. Happy to sort of lead the conversation here with some pretty amazing partners. Elaine Gallagher. Elaine, would you like to give your introduction real quick?
Sure. I'm Elaine Gallagher. I am the Director of Recruitment and Retention for Palm Beach County School District in South Florida. So just for perspective, I am about an hour and a half or so north of Miami, and I am about 2.5 hours south of Orlando and Disney World. So most people always ask me, like, right around where I'm at, that's where I'm at. So I'm in sunny Florida, East Coast. We have a district that is 182 schools strong, about 190,000 students. And so it's a pretty large district for us to serve. I'm excited to be here today. Thank you.
And Dr. Tammy Parrish as well from Kentucky. Dr. Parrish?
Yeah, the absolute polar opposite of Miss Gallagher. I feel like I'm about 2 hours south of the North Pole, right outside of Lexington, Kentucky. We're a really small district. Well, I consider us medium sized. We've got about 6,000 kids and a little over 1,000 employees. And located just southeast of Lexington, Kentucky.
And so, obviously this conversation has come up, right? We know everybody's sort of fighting for talent these days, trying to sort of figure things out. Obviously that changes from big districts, right, to sort of small, sort of more rural districts. And so really excited to sort of bring you two together and sort of talk about the work that you all are doing across the board in the process and sort of take a look at what that looks like overall here. So I think let's just get started in terms of some of the sort of the backdrop around the shortage. We'd love sort of each of you give a little bit of sense of sort of how things are going in terms of how the shortage is sort of running, right? What the impact has been, and sort of how you're thinking about that so far, just given sort of the numbers, given sort of where we are. And I'll pull this off here just so we can actually have a conversation here. So Elaine, you want to get started?
Sure. So for us, the teacher shortage feels like it's been around forever and ever, right? I mean, I think pre-pandemic, we were already concerned about a significant shortage of teachers, always in the critical shortage area where our special education, math, science, reading teachers, always that was part of our constant and consistent conversation. And then the pandemic, of course, changed everything, including the workforce in a very significant way. And so in teaching in particular, I can talk a little bit of data, like back during pandemic days, my vacancy rate was at about 4%. And to compare that to pre-pandemic rates, we always held about a 1% vacancy rate, which meant I employ about 13,000 teachers or so. And so it meant I always consistently had at least 100 vacancies, at least, if not more, right? And so slowly but surely, I think we're starting to repair that. I think we're starting to catch up to pre-pandemic rates, which isn't yet what we want, right? Because we want to be able to fill all our vacancies and ensure that we have qualified teachers in front of our students. But we're slowly inching our way. And so right now, my district is holding at a 2.1 vacancy rate. And so that's good news to us at this point after the last 4 years of really crazy workforce issues that we've had. And, we're feeling the effects of education programs not really having enough graduates or any graduates for us to employ. And so our local universities are struggling through ensuring that their programs are surviving, much less thriving. And so we've had to get very creative and very innovative in looking for ways to fill all those vacancies. And so because we don't ever stop hiring. So I can never tie up a little bow on my hiring process and say, hey, we're fully staffed and we're ready to go. I can maybe say that about a handful of schools at one point or another, but never am I ever fully staffed here.
Tammy, can you give it a little of the sort of your side of the vacancy challenges?
Yeah, so we're significantly smaller, but we face a lot of the same challenges. I think we all do. We are just outside of the second largest district in our state, so there's a lot of competition for us to try to compete, and we just don't have the same tax base, which has encouraged us to take a more of a business mindset approach to how we are going to have to be innovative in retaining and recruiting the most highly qualified staff. So we're seeing a lot of the same things. There's an EC teacher shortage in Kentucky. A lot of different districts are trying a lot of different things to try to recruit and retain those teachers. Same thing with school psychologists, your specialty licensed positions. I like to joke and say that we are a little bit saturated in the elementary education field right now here, but we're also looking at innovative and creative ways for helping some of those teachers to add certifications to kind of fill the need in other roles that we have. Our turnover rate every year is about 90 to 100 teachers, which is huge. And I'm only about 36 months into my role, and so is our superintendent and assistant superintendents. We're all a fairly new staff here, but I tell you, in 36 months, we've really rolled out a lot of really awesome things. And the teachers that we've recruited this year and the ones that we've retained this year, we're really excited to see the status that we're creating and retaining right now.
Love it. Well, I think, what's funny is we can have this conversation, right, in education, and there are just as many similar webinars happening, right, in just a corporate landscape as well. And so I do think, like, it's always this sort of interesting sort of reminder that as much as schools are struggling for talent right now, it's the same conversation we're having in retail, having in, right, sort of accounting, having in legal, right? There's a lot of sort of folks really struggling with the fact that the pipeline, right, is getting shorter, smaller, right, and sort of unemployment's really low. And so it's trying to sort of figure out, what does that next level of innovation look like? I think we'll obviously talk through a couple of the pieces here, but really this idea of like, how do we sort of innovate and what does it look like if you're just doing the same job fairs as you've been doing for the last 10 years? It's not going to work. And I think we know that the retirement curves, right, the next wave of retirements is supposed to hit in 3-4 years. And so in many ways, right, as sort of rough as things are, hopefully stabilizing as things are post-pandemic, I think now we're sort of looking at, well, what just demographically, what is it going to mean when this sort of, next wave of teachers starts to retire, and what does that look like on schools, and sort of how do we manage that? And so want to just jump in, make sure we've got time to sort of talk. And again, please, if you have questions, please feel free to add them to the chat or add them to the Q&A. We'll be sort of watching those as well. I think when we think about sort of the broader workplace, right, culture comes up the most, right? They always say people don't quit their jobs, they quit their bosses, right? And culture is what creates, right, sort of the reason why people want to come to work and why people want to stay. And so I'm just interested in sort of how you all have approached, right, sort of really sort of thinking about sort of school culture, thinking about sort of district culture, and what does that look like, and what are the things that you would attribute to sort of trying to really be sort of positive there. Dr. Parrish, you can start us off here. Sort of what does that look like in terms of how you all have been trying to navigate that and manage that?
Yeah, so we really focus on providing initiatives that do support things that surround mental health. One of the things we started with is looking at some of our leave policies and making some changes to our leave policies. I think everybody has emergency leave. Well, here in Clark County, we went in and revamped that. We no longer call it emergency leave. It's a personal hardship leave. So if you need a mental health day or a mental health break, you don't have to come in with the 3 Ds. We're not looking for a death, a divorce, or a disaster. People are able to determine what mental health needs that they might have or how they need to use those emergency days. We also have some great employee assistance programs where we offer counseling, from financial counseling to marriage counseling across the board. There's a lot of great assistance and even referral programs through our employee assistance. We have some really cool community partnerships that help us to sponsor some wellness programs. Most recently, we just partnered with our local hospital, and we did September and October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month and Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. And we provided all of our staff with substitutes to go get those early screening prevention exams. So that was a really cool partnership and didn't really cost us much of anything, but we were valuing and building that positive culture too. Something else that's really neat that we've done is we provide every employee with a gym membership. So with that gym membership also they get a fitness coach. So every employee has access to a free gym membership and fitness coach. We also have flexible leave. So our staff is no longer required to take half-day increments. They can take hourly increments, which is going to directly and indirectly be a positive impact on students and finances, because our staff staying in the building more often. Teachers are in the classroom. They don't have to take a half a day off to go to an 8 a.m. appointment or a 9 a.m. appointment or a 2 p.m. appointment. So making leave options much more flexible has really promoted a positive culture and change. Another thing we did this year too is we committed a lot of money to smaller class sizes. So we wanted to make sure that the majority of our elementary schools had no more than 20 students in a class, and that we've seen a lot of positive feedback on teacher stress reduction. So that's been positive and uplifting as well. Something else that we've started including in our HR newsletter is a wellness section. So every month when our newsletter comes out, we put a little wellness blurb in there. And generally it's a community partner that's offering free facials or discounted facials or massages or their salt caves or Botox, whatever it might be that, builds and uplifts staff. Our community is really supportive there. So that's just a few of the things we're doing right now.
Love it. Elaine, how about y'all?
So we have a lot of very similar types of strategies and initiatives, but we're a much larger district. So for us, it's kind of on a larger scope. I always like to kind of joke around and say we are a central office for 182 different companies, because I have 182 schools out there with 182 principals who run their buildings and their schools in a very autonomous way, which we're very proud of. We are very proud of the amount of autonomy that we provide our principals. And so when we go and release centralized types of initiatives and stuff, we have to be very strategic about that and have a very strong communication effort. And so a lot of our collaboration occurs with our communication department, and we are very strong on telling our own story. And so we encourage our principals to consistently be telling their own stories, and that's to have a really strong and beautiful online presence. And in order to recruit today's employee, if we're going to be reaching our younger generations, for example, we need to have a very positive and strong online presence. They're checking our websites, they're checking our social media platforms in order to find out if this is where they want to work. And so not just at the district level, but also at the smaller level, we provide a lot of support for our schools to be able to promote their story, tell their stories in a very specific way. And so we have wellness programs that we provide district-wide to all our employees and inform our employees through newsletters, through our communication channels, to ensure that they have access to all the wellness programming and all of that. But more than anything, I think creating a collective vision and mission has been a very important piece for us. So that's something that brings us all together. All 182 companies are on board with this collective vision and mission of educating and inspiring and affirming all of our students. And so it's a very simple statement. Our mission is to educate, affirm, and inspire our students in an equity embedded school system, period. We can all spit it out. We can all say it together. And so ensuring that that mission is communicated throughout all of our schools and that it is part of our story each and every time, I think has been huge in creating a district culture, right? And ensuring that people know and understand what our district culture is. And so all the different little initiatives that Dr. Parrish was mentioning, like leaves, wellness, all those things. Yes, we're definitely engaging in all of that. But I think for us, the challenge in being so big is just making sure that we have a collective culture that we can offer and say, when you work for Palm Beach County School District, this is what we care about. We care about our students. We care about educating them, affirming them, inspiring them, and ensuring that we're all collective in that effort. The second piece of that I would say that was a big part of our strategic plan is creating a culture of customer service. So this is a very business mindset, right, that we brought into our thinking, in that we are a customer service organization. And so whether our customers are students, or our customers are parents, or our customers are our principals, or our customers are our hiring managers, whatever that might be, looking at everyone around us as a customer that we are serving and providing the best that we can. And so our tagline is Palm Beach County School District is your best choice, whether it's for students or for employees. And so creating that collectively is what I see as being very helpful for us.
Yeah, I'm actually midway through Unreasonable Hospitality, which is a new book that just came out about sort of, it's about a New York restaurant that sort of has gone crazy above and beyond in terms of hospitality and trying to redefine restaurant hospitality. And it's just a very interesting sort of lens from this, like, a very corporate customer service mindset, and then trying to think about what does it look like to instill that into a school. And I love how you all think about that autonomy. I know I saw a presentation on your whole Thank a Teacher program and just sort of the level of community engagement you get about the Thank a Teacher program, and the fact that it's mostly funded through a healthcare partner who obviously, wants to highlight their brand as well, has been pretty interesting to sort of see what that looks like. I mean, I think in that point, right, there's a lot of the sense of like, how do you market the district, right? Because what we know is districts historically haven't really had to sort of take on a marketing role and haven't really had to sort of take on a sort of brand recognition role. And I don't think that's been the sort of the main place of like really trying to think about what it looks like. And in particular, I think both of you have sort of touched on this, but not explicitly, right? Is nowadays we're really marketing to Gen Z and really marketing to a younger demographic because, right, those are both the kids who have families having younger kids, right, that are coming to elementary schools, and the employees that we're trying to sort of attract. And so I'm interested in sort of how you've all thought about sort of the Gen Z world. How are you thinking about, right, sort of what are the big differences you're seeing in that sort of Gen Z landscape as you're sort of trying to manage that? And what does that look like so far as you've been trying to, sort of roll out similar policies and processes as it works? Either one.
Do you want to go first on this one?
Sure.
Okay. So some of the things that we've been intentional about is we looked at this demographic and this population, and some of the highest needs were childcare. So we now have started our staff-only childcare center, and we only charge $20 a day, and it's pre-tax deducted. So it ends up being like $18 a day. And we even provide breakfast and lunch for those kids. So we provide service from 6 to 6. If needed. Another thing that we do is called our preschool payment program. Not everyone has preschool available to them here if they don't qualify. So our staff can participate in a payment program and they get preferential placement at our preschool. And then we also offer them aftercare services for their children. So that's kind of been a big push this year. We've got a lot of great feedback from that. A lot of staff have told us that it's saving them about $6,000 a year per child for childcare. So that was kind of a new initiative. We talked about the gym memberships. We've also got a pretty comprehensive discount guide for everything from rental cars to apartments to other property management partnerships that we have going here. Most recently, just literally over the last few months, we just started implementing an infertility and adoption benefits plan. So we sponsor up to $5,000 a year for every employee going through an adoption or infertility treatment. That has had a lot of really positive feedback as well. And that's that, that younger generation that's just kind of getting started, either building a family or raising their family. So those are a couple of things. Another really neat thing that we've done with BloomBoard is we've partnered with a district paid rank change program. We have 50 students currently, or teachers currently enrolled in BloomBoard's rank change program. And part of that agreement was those teachers agreed to stay with us for almost 9 years. So we paid for everything. They signed a retention contract with us. So they're getting something out of it, but the district is as well in order to retain, those most highly qualified staff. Another really cool thing, we're hiring a lot of our students. So we're getting them into our pathways. So that way we're bringing them up, this Gen Z population, we're bringing them up and indoctrinating them in this Clark County Public Schools vision and mission as well. And we're also revamping our educator pathway. So really looking at being intentional with our middle schoolers as far as like a junior pathway option and getting those kids involved as well. A really cool thing that we've not got underway yet, but something that we're really looking at doing is providing housing. So providing like a tiny housing facility for a lot of our new teachers, or like a teacher exchange program. So that's something that we're kind of working on the logistics with. We're going to partner with our technical school that we have here within our district to build these tiny homes. But we haven't fully flushed this one out yet, but that's something that we're considering for this next generation of teachers.
Elaine, anything on the Gen Z side that you all sort of been trying to?
I think one of the things that we've really come to realize, and it's interesting that we just now recently came to realize it, and I think the Gen X generation, which is the one that's getting ready to retire, right? That those are the workers that came in and were prepared and ready to devote 30, 35 years, 40 years to education, specifically to teaching probably, right? And realizing that the Gen Zer is really not that type of employee. That type of employee is quite comfortable exploring many different opportunities and in different ways. And if they don't find that it is satisfying to them, whether it's to their family or to themselves in some way or another, if it's not a supportive environment for them, they're very comfortable moving on to do something else. And so their commitment to the work environment is very different. And I think that has a lot to do with how it's informed our levels of support for the Gen Zer and looking at how we can differentiate our systems of support for our teachers specifically in order to support the Gen Zer, in order to support the Gen Xer, which is currently working for us, the millennial, which is currently working for us, and the multitude of generations, right? So I think doing a lot of work around systems of support and what those teachers need when they walk in the door. But I also think we have also said we have 190,000 students. Those are all graduating from our high schools and someday could be our employees, right? And so we have really enhanced certain systems. We have a Florida Future Educators of America club, which happens at the middle school and high school level. And these are all students who may or may not be interested in education, but are engaged in education activities with education themed type activities. We also then go bring it down to the elementary level with Teachers of Tomorrow. And so that's another after school club that elementary children can then join. And so we have then that pathway all the way from elementary into high school, inviting them into into education as a profession, then offering them scholarships. And so we have an employee-funded scholarship, the Palm Beach Future Educators of America Scholarship, that we provide for students who it's completely employee-funded, so we can choose to donate to that on our weekly paycheck or our biweekly paychecks. And then we provide a scholarship for students who are interested into getting their degree in education, going into the education environment, and then we offer them employment when they come back. And so that scholarship opens every single year. It is completely funded by our employees and then supported in that way. So it's a really great initiative for us to recruit our own students into the education profession, as well as our employees, because we open that up to our non-instructional employees as well. And so it's a really great, it's also a good feel kind of thing, because we as employees are contributing to other employees then growing their career pathway and coming into the education profession. We also have, you know, the benefits that Dr. Parrish is mentioning. We also have offered some of those, the discount guides, all of that. But I just want to say a quick word about the flexibility. We are one of the only districts in Florida that has a remote work policy. And so we have implemented, and we are in the third year of a remote work policy implementation, which tends to be an important little thing for our Gen Z employees. And while that is not as accessible for our teaching workforce, has done really great things for our centralized office. At the same time, it's provided our principals with some flexibility to allow teachers, for example, on their teacher workday, to work a remote day. So if it's the report card day or whatever, they know we have all the equipment, we already did it. Right? It's not like we have to recreate anything because we've already gone fully remote. And so our principals are then able to give our teachers the flexibility of participating in professional development virtually and also working remotely on a teacher workday when they don't have full student contact, right? Could we do more with that? Probably. But so far, it really has opened up a lot of flexibility that doesn't normally exist in a school center or in a school district. And our systems of support at the central office have really benefited from that remote work policy as well. I think that's about it I have for now.
Well, I mean, I think you mentioned the remote side. I mean, obviously, you know, when you think about sort of the Gen Z world, I do think that it's pretty important to recognize that like the future teacher workforce is probably not the 30-year workforce, right? That is not the reality. And that then thinking about it as well, most of the Gen Z, the research right now is, you know, people generally look at like careers, right? Almost like little tours of duty in 5-7 year increments. And so if we can sort of think about what does it mean to redesign the teacher pipeline and redesign the workforce, to sort of take folks, plug them into teaching roles, get them sort of well-trained, get them up to speed, and then offer flexible remote environments in admin and be able to sort of continue to scale, continue to sort of build their work, where we can still keep that pipeline internal to schools. But obviously, right, most folks, the remote sort of side of things does just feel more convenient. And there's lots of pushes to sort of do that. So it's pretty interesting that you all have been able to pull that off and see it work so well. The other one I think is sort of fascinating is just that summer flexibility, right? And what we hear over and over and over again is it's something crazy of like, people under 30, 50+% of them have some side hustle. Right. And that's a really interesting data in terms of like the number of people now trying to do something on the side in some way, shape, or form, and the ability to sort of use some of that summer flexibility or use that flexibility. Have you all been doing sort of much in terms of sort of trying to sort of manage that or support that or sort of show, right, that people can sort of use this as a great way to sort of build a side hustle as well in the summers because they've got summers off? Have you seen that sort of been helpful in trying to sort of create some of that more flexibility? Because I think teachers get a bad rap of a little bit more rigid, but it doesn't necessarily highlight a lot of the flexibility that they often have in terms of being able to sort of show, here's what this looks like. Here's you have a bunch of flexibility. It's just in a different sort of structure.
So we've been actually quite intentional about using our calendar to promote and to market our district, right? Because we do recognize and acknowledge it's kind of a great calendar, we actually have a whole week off for Thanksgiving. We have 2 weeks off during winter break, and then we have spring break, and then you have the 2 months off for the summer. And so we have put that into our marketing strategy and market the fact that you have all of this time that you're off. Now, we haven't really necessarily connected it to working a side gig or something like that, but we've definitely been using the time off or the time away from the work as a marketing strategy. We've also done that in order to really reach parents. And so because we are such a large district and I have 182 schools, that's 182 communities, right? And a lot of these parents are people who may want to pursue a different career. They're Gen Z parents, they're millennial parents. They may be looking to switch up whatever they're doing in some kind of way. And so we've done a lot of marketing. We run a commercial on TV, which is something we never used to do before in the lab. We just developed that. Last year, we run a commercial on TV, and it's our Proud Kids commercial, and it's children with their parents talking about how proud they are that their parents work for the school district of Palm Beach County.
I love it.
And talking about the different positions that they hold within the county and how proud they are of them. We're super proud of that commercial, but and using that calendar to say we're a family-oriented organization, right? You can spend time with your family because you have this calendar to be able to support a family.
Tammy, how are you all? It sounds like you all have a bunch sort of geared towards that flexibility option. Or are you all doing sort of work in the similar vein?
We do. So our schedule really revolves around our families here as well. Not so much today, but years past, we had a lot of families that would harvest crops in the fall, and we would have to dedicate time off of school so kids could help families. We've not really gone back to the harvesting model, but we still offer the full fall break. So our kids get the full fall break. We have a little bit of a later start as well. We do the full Christmas break. So yes, our calendars definitely resemble what our community wants. We even have our calendars put out a couple of years in advance. So it really helps with family planning. Another thing that we do too to try to help with some of that summer flexibility too is we offer childcare year round. So our teachers that may want to pick up some extra positions in the summer or teach summer school, we still have our childcare facility open for them for year round. We're very strategic too about our teacher work days. I've tried to get 10 work days built in. So far, that one's not been approved yet, but I'm trying to make sure that, we really value teachers' time around here and give them the opportunity to get caught up on some stuff. And I love what Ms. Gallagher and her team's doing with the remote flexibility of teacher work days. That's brilliant. I love that. Definitely wrote it down in my notes to bring back here. But so a lot of similar things, and offering the childcare during the summer, I think has been a benefit too for our staff.
Yeah, we hear time and time again across all the districts we work in, right? The reality is, right, certainly the Gen Z population is much more, right, connected to having an impact, right? And so I think that's one of these areas where, right, if you can sort of both offer, here's a way to really reach kids, right, and really have an impact in society, right? We should win that one outright all the time versus almost any other industry. And if you can follow that with, and here's a way to stay close to your kids and follow your kids and go to school with your kids, that's a pretty amazing sort of pairing to just sort of really be able to sort of share and make that really sort of public and make that known. I'm interested in sort of how on the sort of point of sharing, I'm sort of interested in sort of how you all are in social media spaces, right? Sort of what that looks like. Sort of how are you trying to sort of reach candidates, right? It sounds like between TV, right? So we talked a little bit on social media. Just interested from a how are you trying to find future teachers and think about sort of the workforce, right? What does that look like? And have there been specific medium that you have felt, right, have been pretty helpful? Or and sort of what does that look like so far in terms of your outreach?
So we collaborate with our communications department to do that work. It's important to us to have a consistent message. And so we don't necessarily do our own messaging, but we work with communications to do that. And so we are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, we have a very strong presence on those. We have not jumped into TikTok. That has not been a platform that our district has jumped into. We're a little unique in Florida for some of that stuff, but and then we're also very conscientious about what's on our website, on the websites themselves, on our web pages. Each individual school has their own website, and so we're also very conscientious about what we're doing with those websites, right? We could do better, I think, in the social media platforms. I think that we could do a lot more. We do spend a lot of time sharing our stories of what we do for children and what we do for students. And so our pain point, I'll say, with our communications department is to say, can we feature just equal amount about what we're doing for employees and what we are and who we are as a workforce? And that's just kind of always the rub for us, right? We want to make sure that parents feel like their children are safe and are in the best school that they can be, and want to be sure, because we also have a lot of competition happening in Florida with charter schools, private schools, et cetera. And so the consistent competition for enrollment is important to us as well. And so our rub is, okay, can we spend a little more time talking about also who we are as an employer and what we can offer to everybody? And so I think we could do a lot more work in that area with social media, because I do think that's where Gen Z is looking for us. I think that's where the new workforce is going to learn who we are and how we are. We literally have, our principals will often get an email from a candidate who said, I saw this about your school on Twitter and I loved it. And so I'd really like to, submit an application at your school, kind of thing. And so we need to be doing a lot of work in that area for sure.
Tammy, how are you all? Are you all sort of doing a bunch on social media? How's that sort of going so far?
Yeah, we're kind of doing the same thing. A lot of our schools have the autonomy to kind of do their own. We have some that do some TikTok stuff, and but our district presence is very much so Facebook, Instagram, and the schools will post on their own behalf. Each school actually has their own social media coordinator, because we do request that they make daily posts. Something else neat that we've actually kind of dabbled in doing a year or so ago are digital job descriptions. So Gen Z is apparently out there looking for more of a digital job description than they are a written one. So that's something we've kind of toyed with. We've created a couple in Canva. I like the interactivity as well, because most of the resumes that we're getting in, they're no longer the paper resumes. Everybody's got a QR code or a link or a YouTube channel. So we're trying to make sure that we kind of stay, in the same realm with them. Another really cool thing that we do too, we have our own little local media with our high school students. It's called Smoke Signals. They are out and about. I put them up just as next to close to any of the local media sources that we have here, as far as their publications are pretty awesome. Something else that our superintendent's really encouraged is that each of us have a relationship with a local television station. So the majority of the directors here and our principals, we have each of the 4 local TV stations kind of on speed dial. So if we have a really cool program coming up or something we want to highlight, we can text them and almost get a story the same day. So we're
Great.
on the news a lot around here. We like to write our own narrative and really market ourselves that way. A lot of school districts try to avoid the news. We try to make the news every week. So we're always highlighting something within our district, writing our own narrative.
Well, I think, I mean, to that point, right, what the research suggests is that basically the more you can tell real stories of real people, that's what matters, right? That's what converts, that's what gets people sort of hooked. And in many ways, it's not surprising because I think a lot of the recruiting, right, sort of folks have realized over the last 10 years, right, the best recruiters to go to a job fair, the best recruiters in general are the people actually in the job, right? Generally, teachers, prospects don't really want to hear from someone in admin about what the job that they might do, right? They want to hear from somebody who loves their job and why they love their job and what it's like to do it and how much they want to sort of feel like, do I see myself in this person's shoes, in the same role, in the same job? And that's, I think, the beauty of social media for all its faults, right? It does have the ability to sort of create that storytelling power. And so the more it's around sort of trying to highlight, and I think a lot of this is like in every school in the country, there are great stories about teachers, right? About kids and about families doing great work. And yet it's one of these things because of the hustle and bustle, it just often gets sort of pushed aside. And so the more there's somebody really focused on sort of deliberately trying to sort of surface those stories, and it can be in as off the cuff way as possible, right? What matters is more the authenticity of it than it, right? Sort of trying to sort of navigate, some production value for the most part. But it's, again, something we've just seen over and over again come through. I guess as we sort of think about sort of the sort of pipeline in particular, you both have sort of mentioned a little bit of the idea of like the future pipeline, right? And we know the future pipeline is probably not going to come from ed prep, right? In its totality, right? The ed prep enrollment is really low and getting lower. And so we're just not going to have enough 20-year-olds to staff schools in the future. And so I'm interested in sort of, as you all are thinking about sort of this idea around sort of, growing your own sort of talent, right? Sort of really thinking about sort of what that's looked like. Can you just share sort of what that sort of process, what that sort of thought has been and sort of how it's going so far?
So I would say in the last 2 years, our focus has really shifted from recruiting outside of us to recruiting from within of us. And I mean that in like many different facets. And so looking at our student population and going back to those clubs that I mentioned, the Teachers of Tomorrow, the FFEA, Florida Future Educators of America, and the Palm Beach Future Educator Scholarship, looking at that force as our future workforce because they're local, they're here, they're literally our high school graduates who typically the research says they're going to sometime come back home after they graduate from college. And then also taking a look at our non-instructional workforce because we are a very large employer. And so we have a large number of non-instructional employees to then recruit from. And so creating pathways that we can access and make accessible for them in order to do a different career from within. Number one, I think that one of the smartest things about that is that they already live here in Palm Beach County. One of our struggles and our challenges, number one, is we have a high cost of living here in Palm Beach County, Florida. And so to actually then recruit someone who already has figured out the means to live here and to sustain a living here is then really important. Because one of our challenges is the people who are moving in from out of state are definitely having a lot of difficulty creating a sustainable living space here. And so looking at our own community and within, it has been very important in that. And then looking at our non-instructional population also looks at people who are committed to our district already, committed to our students, committed to our community in one way or another. And so that kind of creates a really great formula for us to then focus on how we can best make our education pathways accessible to them. And so we've done that in a number of different ways. We've got the scholarship. We also, one of the things that was kind of a big win for us, but really super simple. Any of our non-instructional employees who are actually just going to traditional college, getting their education degree because they've been paraprofessionals or substitutes with us forever, and they finally just wanted to become a teacher. When it came to student teaching, they literally had to resign from their position, take a semester without pay, benefits or anything in order to do student teaching. It made no sense. And so we created a way for them to stay employed in their current position, continue to get paid. They have a leave of absence, they continue to have their benefits, and be able to complete their student teaching experience to then be able to transition to a teaching position after that. So there were a few little things that we did. And then our partnership with BloomBoard, of course, created a job embedded degree pathway for non-instructional employees with 60 credits, an associate's degree, in order to then access a job embedded bachelor's degree program, so that at the end of 2 years, they graduate with their bachelor's degree and are able to take on a teaching position, all within job embedded coursework. And so they're not having to go to school after school. They're not having to go to Saturday school, kind of like how I got my degree, you know, many, many years ago with small family and small children, trying to juggle all of that. So taking that challenge away from it, creating that pathway. And so the pipeline, like I always say, that the solution is right here in front of us. It's right here within this district. It's right here within this community. We really don't need to reach out as much as we have in the past. We've actually backed off of doing a lot of job fairs and the traditional, even though they're still occurring everywhere. We have backed off of doing some of that work because it's not yielding what we need. And so really believing in what's within and what we can access within our communities and within our own workforce and within our own student enrollment. Those are great pipelines for us.
Tammy, how about y'all? I know you mentioned the rank change program. Right, sort of other similar, how are you all thinking about sort of that growing from within model?
Yeah, so we're a whole lot smaller. So our whole city is made up of about 40,000 people. But everyone around us seems to be a lot larger. Most of the districts around us, their populations are a lot larger. But some of the cool things that we have intentionally done to try to increase our pipeline is we've got 25% of our staff involved in a rank change program. Like I said, we have 50 in the BloomBoard program. And then we have about another 100 doing some other types of options that are available here in Kentucky. One of the intentional things that we do here, I also have an assistant director in HR, and she and I are very diligent in getting out to the universities, getting to know the deans and the directors for the education departments. And so currently we're serving on 3 different advisory panels at our local universities. Being on those panels kind of gets you your foot in the door to the most highly qualified student teachers or clinical students. So for a couple of years now, we've been working with these clinical students from the advisory side, but now we're drawing them to our community. So they're coming from larger universities to a really small community where they feel heard, they feel seen, they feel valued, because we're small enough that we get to know each other. Everyone knows each other. But how do we continue to expand a pipeline when we can't pay the same? We try to do other initiatives and incentives. So just like we put kids through a tiered program, we put our teachers through a tiered program. So teachers are given mentors from the district level. They're given mentors at the building level. And we kind of wean them off over the years as they become more comfortable with curriculum and planning or classroom management. So it's the same type of tiered structure. And so the other teachers that are here providing the services, they are compensated monetarily for providing those services to our new teachers. So that definitely helps with advancement and growth on both ends, the new teacher and the tenure teacher. Something else that we do as well is we go ahead and we reach out and we offer, let us come out as an HR department and talk to your student teachers about applying for positions, about the steps of becoming a new employee, the HR processes. So we cover all the forms, the K-4s, the W-4s, the IRS documents. So we offer those services for free to universities because we're getting our county heard. And we usually get to do a little pitch in there too about retention and recruitment for the district. So that's something else that we do intentionally. We're also starting a growing greatness program, which is where we give a $10,000, well, we haven't yet, this is what we're working on, but we're going to give a $10,000 stipend to our graduates that come back and teach here. It's going to have an MOA, a retention contract attached to it, because we're investing in them. You know, we want them to continue to stay here, but they're going to be from the community. So we're hoping that that program is very successful, but we're just now getting started in our teacher apprenticeship program. Something else really neat we do, we give over $500,000 every year to current staff for extra services. So extra stipends or extracurricular programs that they might want to sponsor or start at their building level. Something else really neat that we do, because like we all know, it's really hard to get people to stay in the profession. So we really intentionally educate our teachers. We have a tiered system in Kentucky. So we educate them on their retirement. What does your retirement look like? And because our pension program just got revamped a year or so ago, we now offer a 5% retirement match. And I talk to the teachers and I'm like, look, you're young. This may not mean anything to you, but come year 30, you're going to wish you invested in this. And I show them the numbers. Like, if you don't invest, then you don't get this free money. And our district does. Our district matches 5% of every supplemental retirement plan that our employees contribute to. So that's huge. I think educating them is another big way to help them to advance and grow in the profession as well.
And I think a lot of it, I mean, what we find time and time again is it comes back to sort of that convenience factor, right? Which is people want, especially, right, people want to upskill. They want to figure out, right, how to feel like they're pushing themselves, challenging themselves. My favorite book on this entire topic is Daniel Pink's Drive. If you haven't read it, you should absolutely get it. But it's really, the whole idea is, right, what really motivates people. And, historically, I think we've always said, well, it's money. That's what people care about. In reality, right, when they do the research, it really comes down to this idea of autonomy, mastery, and purpose, right? And so we've covered off purpose, right? We know we should dominate purpose in the education world, right? That's why we're all here. I think the autonomy and mastery piece is the ones that are really, those are a little bit trickier, because teaching, right, can be, right, pretty confined in terms of its lanes, in terms of what it's looking for. But the idea that you can give people on the job abilities to upskill and get better coaching, get better feedback, that's really connected to a lot of that autonomy, a lot of that sort of mastery. And I think what we find, whether it's the rank change, whether it's master's degree pathways, right, we know that people are busy. They've got busy lives. They've got a ton of stuff going on. And the idea that you have time to go back to school in the normal sense, right, or to take time off and not get paid, that's not real, right? But even trying to do nights and weekends courses is just not enough anymore, right? And especially in a world where we're finding, it's 60+% of the adult population doesn't have a bachelor's degree yet. And that's a really interesting population to be able to sort of tap into and figure out, right, from a bachelor's degree standpoint, or once you got them in, from an upskilling to a master's to a rank change standpoint in Kentucky, how do you sort of make that the most convenient process? Because we just hear over and over and over again, right, this question of, well, am I going to miss time spending time with my family? Am I going to have to sort of go do other, sort of logistical, right, HR sort of compliance-y sort of burdens, more check boxes? But if we can really create a structure where advancement just feels like coaching, right, and it feels like you can do it on the job, that's really what we've seen sort of as a home run, just in terms of how do you start to all of a sudden change that narrative and say to candidates, look, we're not only going to sort of invest in you and value you, but we're really going to embed in sort of a way to give you feedback and help you feel like you're mastering your career, which I think in the long run, it's early days, right? But I think in the long run, what we're going to find is teachers are going to be more comfortable in front of classrooms, and they're going to be more comfortable sort of managing kids, right? And they're going to be sort of more comfortable in their sort of areas, which means the grind will feel less and that they will stay longer in that process. And they still might get to the end of 7 years and say, because Gen Z wants to do everything new every 7 years, right? I'm going to go switch a whole different career. That's okay. But as long as we've got sort of ways for folks to feel really confident, and I think if we can change some of the narrative around, right, what it means to be really well prepared in a school and not just sort of thrown in and, try to figure it out, I think that's really a sort of key piece that we see just more broadly in terms of this whole push towards on-the-job degrees, towards on-the-job, right, certification, is that it just will change what that looks like over time. And so I'm just interested, can you share a little bit? I know the candidate feedback is always what we sort of hear, right? If you can share a little bit of that sort of candidate feedback, as you've heard of sort of folks as they've been trying to sort of go through some of that autonomy mastery, right, sort of learning, what has been sort of the feedback from candidates going through the process as they've been sort of trying to work on those new pathways?
So we currently have several students going through the BloomBoard program, and then we are just now launching in Kentucky the Option 9 program. I'm not not sure if everybody's familiar with that or not, but it's basically a way for non-instructional staff to go back to school while they're doing job embedded professional development or coursework. A lot of the feedback that I'm getting from the teachers going through the BloomBoard program is it's extremely beneficial to them in the moment. So the things that they are learning in their class are things that they're actually implementing with their students. So being in the moment, having real life feedback, the feedback too is incredible because they're getting support at the building level and from BloomBoard as well. So they're getting double the amount of support in trying to work their way through a rank change program, like you said, while balancing, a family and having a full-time career. Super excited, looking forward to expanding our partnership with BloomBoard to continue to advance our teacher apprenticeship program. Super excited to see how those logistics work out. But currently, as a district, we're funding several employees to go through these programs as a part of expanding our pipeline for teachers. One of the ways that we're doing it intentionally is we know that we have an EC teacher shortage. We know that we have a secondary teacher shortage. So we are offering to pay for these programs through BloomBoard, through other university partnerships, in order for those non-instructional staff members to go back to school to fulfill those critical needs.
Love it. Elaine, similar candidate feedback sort of perspective so far?
Yeah, so I mean, so far the way the program right now that I referenced earlier, where we're partnering with BloomBoard, I have several candidates in that program right now where they are running their own classroom. They are doing a fully job embedded program to acquire their bachelor's degree. The systems of support that are in place for them, they are extremely appreciative of and feel completely supported along the way, right? Because BloomBoard provides support, our district office is providing support, and then there are support systems in the school embedded as well. So it's like this three-tiered approach for those candidates. They are fully engaged in enjoying being a part of a classroom, having their own classroom to implement all of this and not having then all those additional coursework things to do after school, on the weekend, and so forth. So far the candidate feedback has been extremely positive. This is our first semester that we're implementing the program for them. I can then further say our candidates that are doing their student teaching experiences through being paid to do their student teaching experience, which I said is just kind of a very new but very easy win for us to create that pathway for our non-instructional employees. They're super grateful that they're able to do that. But anything that we can do to offer that non-instructional staff a supported pathway, I think has positive results. I think, again, we're working with an employee who is committed to this community, lives within this community, and what is committed to our students in doing this work. And so as long as the systems of support are in place, our feedback has been really, really phenomenal.
Well, we're coming up here on time, and so I want to give you sort of both chance. If you were talking to somebody new into HR, new into talent, right, who is sort of coming in trying to figure out, given everything, right, sort of that's happening now, what would be your sort of guidance? What would be your hope in terms of sort of how to sort of distill down all these different things, right, and try and sort of really figure out what that sort of priorities would be? How would you counsel them today, just as our final?
My one thing that I'd say is I think as a school district, we tend to think in a very specific way. And I think these are times where we need to really be creative and innovative and step outside of our school district box and thinking about our workforce and thinking about how we recruit and retain teachers. I think it is a whole new world, and we need to be able to look outside and beyond what we have always done. Our school districts are embedded with this is the way we've always done it, and that's why we do it this way. We need to start thinking more as what is a new way that we could do this thing. And so I think that is a huge piece, allowing for the creativity and innovation to enter into the profession and to really become a part of a way that we recruit and retain teachers. And I also would say, look within, because we've always been looking out. I think we need to look within more. And I think that can create a lot of solutions with that creativity and innovation embedded in place.
Yeah, so this is kind of the new model we've inherited. When we came in, like I said, between us, we all have 36 months in our new roles. And when we would ask questions, why are these things done this way? We would be told, well, that's the way they've always been done. So we are here to break the mold, and we like to come at things with a blended approach. Because like you said, my husband is in a public sector position, and they're having the same challenges that we all are having. And when I say blended role, we try to think of it as, yes, we're a school system, but we're going to have to learn how to operate as a business. So we try to think of ways that we can help people incentivize work-life balance, but also help with finances, but also help with building their career. So something else that we're kind of working on right now with a local bank is we're getting mortgage discounts. So if your bank is offering a mortgage at 7%, they're going to give you $500 off closing, or $350 off closing, or et cetera, et cetera. So just really partnering and thinking as a business instead of just operating as a state-run school system has really been beneficial for us in trying to get new and innovative things, because we're all limited with a budget. But when you start renting out assets or looking at ways to bring revenue in, then you can be more innovative and afford to push new initiatives that break the mold for sure.
And I would say, and maybe this is a good place to end, I'm always surprised at sort of how much, right, school districts don't necessarily think of themselves at the scale that they actually operate, right? In that, right, it's pretty easy in education to think like, well, I work for a school district, but in reality, right, we know most school districts are the largest employers in their community, right? They're the largest food service, right, sort of providers. They're the large, like, pick a topic. They're often the largest of X in their communities because of the way that it's built and the way that we sort of serve kids and the way we serve families. And so I do always think that there's so much leverage in that is still yet untapped from other employer relationships, right? Others are banker, right? You mentioned sort of banking discounts, whether it's, healthcare providers sort of providing, right, sort of think teacher programs, right? There's just a lot of potential here in terms of really being able to leverage that. And so I hope this has been helpful. I really appreciate you both for taking the time to join us here. Certainly, if you have questions, right, you can sort of feel free to follow up. We'll send an email out after the webinar here. But I really appreciate the time, and thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much.